Lightnin Charlie, thank you very much for joining me on the show. I appreciate your time, and I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Scott. Good to be here, brother.
Hey man, I gotta start off by telling you I love the backdrop. This is one of my favorite backdrops for any interview that I've done so far. So why don't you start? Tell us a little bit about the the two guitars
I look
behind
like
you.
windshield wipers, right?
That's right. That's
Um,
right.
let's see. Uh, there's just a couple examples behind me, Scott, of proof of how much my wife loves me. After 26 years of marriage, these are only two of many. When I'm asked how many guitars do I have, my answer is always not enough. Um, this one right here is the Sunburst is a 58 Gibson 125. That's a really great blues guitar. It's just a great one P90 pickup. And then the Whitebird behind me there is a Gibson Les Paul 61 reissue. That was There's some interesting trivia about the Les Paul. The Les Paul was originally a whoops, I'm looking on the wrong shoulder. Was originally a double cutaway like that, and was used by Les Paul's wife, Mary Ford. That was the guitar she used all the time on their television show and everything, and was associated with her. Uh, and then they got divorced, and Les Paul wanted his name off of that guitar because he didn't want any kind of connection with his now ex-wife.
Hmm.
And so they took that body, Gibson, and started calling it SG for solid guitar, and started putting Les Paul's name on the single cutaway version of that guitar.
Hmm.
So that's the long story there. But hey, it's Sunday morning. We're drinking coffee, right? We're having the
That's
Sunday morning coffee podcast.
that's right.
What
That's
what
exactly right.
what do we got if not stories, right?
That's what we're here for, man. That's what we're here for. So how much selling do you have to do to your wife before you buy another guitar? Is that a long process, or does she just roll her eyes and know it's coming?
If you think I'm letting that secret out, you're crazy.
You could probably write another
I could
book on
make
that.
$1 million. The thing is, it's funny, Scott, is I used to tell her, and it's the truth, man, this is a great investment. You know, this guitar appreciates in value, doesn't depreciate. What can you, but very few things you can buy that actually go up in value. And that's all true. But after about maybe 10, 15 years of working that, she finally answered me with saying, but you never sell a guitar, right? So to realize the appreciation value and get that profit, you've got to then sell a guitar for the increased value. And she says, you never sold one.
Right.
So I had to just, uh, go forward with a new plan of attack, which is being self-employed at the end of the tax year. If I don't spend the money on myself and my business, I give the money to the government to spend, so that, I can buy myself a guitar at the end of the year, or I can let the government buy a guitar for somebody else that doesn't even
Right.
play guitar.
That's right. There's a big difference between investor and collector, right?
There you go. Thank you. See, you put
You're
that
welcome.
very succinctly.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Feel free to use it
Yeah,
as much
man.
as you need to. So, talk
Thank
about
you.
a little bit about your childhood, where you grew up, just a little bit of background about Lightnin Charlie.
Well, I was born and raised in Miami, Florida, 60s and 70s. 61 years old. And so I came up uh, in an era when pop music was absolutely outstanding. Um, and I also had the benefit of an older brother, an older sister, and aunts and uncles who were really into 50s music, the decade prior to me, and so I had access to their record collection, and my aunt, my mother's baby sister, Jeanette, my aunt Jeanette, who was like a second mother to me and my brother and sister, um, knew Elvis and knew his family, and used to take long weekends to Graceland when Elvis first bought Graceland. And when he was away in the Army, she would still go on a bus visit from Greenville, Tennessee, East Tennessee, where they lived at that time, uh, and spend long weekends there and go out with Elvis, not as a date, but go out roller skating or to the movies or whatever they were doing. And so I grew up in Miami, a very international city. There's so much music and vibe and energy in the air, and Latin influences, and black music, and the pop music on is just so great from the mid late 60s 70s, that I grew up just absorbing all of that, and left Florida for to go back to East Tennessee, where my family had left in the 50s, to go to college and stuff. And here, and then I've lived in East Tennessee for 44 years.
And
And
did you ever? I know Elvis died. You would have been a teenager, I guess, or thereabouts.
I would have been 50. Yeah,
Did you ever get to meet him yourself?
I did not. No, I met his family. My aunt took me to Memphis. Elvis died in August of 77. Uh, she took me on a visit as a 16-year-old in like summer of 78. Uh, and I met his dad. I met Vernon, Elvis's dad, and his aunt Lorraine. We stayed at her house. She showed me some Elvis items that were absolutely incredible. Uh, and she's Lorraine was married to Elvis's mother's brother. So his name was Travis, and he died late 60s, something like that. So she was widowed, but she had an apartment that Elvis, he paid for everything for everybody.
Mm.
Um, and but she showed me. I know there was one item. It was the International Hotel in Las Vegas had given him a pendant, and it was probably about, we can see on camera, it was about
Yep.
the size of, like is bigger than a baseball, about the size of like a softball, flat
Hmm.
nugget gold with a coin in the center, and it said Elvis and diamonds around the top. And she had it just in a drawer in this little modest little duplex apartment. And she said, "Would you like to hold it?" And I put my hands out, and when she put it in my hands just dropped. Like you handed somebody a piano or something. I don't know what this thing was worth if it weren't Elvis's, but uh, she just kept it there in her house, and she had a King James Bible that was Elvis's. That it was a white bound King James Bible, and from Genesis to Revelation, Elvis had scribbled in every margin and on every page, all
Wow.
throughout the whole Bible. It was amazing. And coming up, being so into music, I wasn't performing music. I was playing guitar, by myself in my bedroom, learning, playing along with records and so forth. Never played in garage bands, and never had played high school dances, or did any of that kind of standard upbringing stuff. Uh, I didn't do any of that till I was grown and in college, and didn't start singing until later. Also, was just a guitar player in a band, and until our singer flaked out and quit, and we had auditioned singers for a couple of weeks, and they were all flakier than the guy we just got rid of.
Singers,
So
eh?
yeah, right. So they just said, "You're the singer," and I said, "But I'm not a singer." They said, "You are now," and that's the way that happened.
So, how did your aunt come to know Elvis?
That's a great story. It's I tell it in detail in my book, Off the Record. This is going to sound crazy. It sounds crazy to me, but my grandmother and grandfather lived in East Tennessee in a little town called Greenville, Tennessee, which is 450 miles from Memphis, almost the entire length of the state away from Memphis, Tennessee. My grandmother was a seamstress. She wrote a song, and this was in 1956. My grandmother wrote a song. I don't know that she ever wrote a song before or since. She didn't play an instrument. She didn't sing. I don't know where this song came from, but she had a song. So now the next step after you write a song is to get someone to sing it, right? So who are you going to get to sing it? Well, the biggest star on earth in 1956, Elvis. So how do we get the song to Elvis? Well, that's easy. She puts her 16-year-old daughter, Jeanette, that's my aunt, on a Greyhound bus with the song, sends her from Greenville to Memphis, 450 miles away, don't know a soul in Memphis, Tennessee. She checks into a hotel in Memphis and goes down to the gates of Graceland. And that would have been in 57. Elvis bought Graceland, I think, in like March of 57. And she's hanging out at the gates with all the other fans and stuff and talking to the gatekeeper who invited her to dinner. He found out she was in town alone, everything, invited her to his house for a home-cooked meal, meet his wife. He had said, I have 2 sons that are your age. And when he gets off his shift, he opens the gates, lets her in, gets in a golf cart, and they go up the driveway, and he gets out and says, come on. And she says, I thought we were going to your house for dinner. He says, well, we are. This is my house. I live here. I'm Elvis's Uncle Travis.
Oh, wow.
And so she goes in and she remained friends with Aunt Lorraine. That's Travis's wife, Lorraine, until her death. And a greater starter kit for a rock and roll singer and a kid, who's just loves rock and roll music, loves country music, loves gospel, loves pop music, loves rock music, loves soul music. Who's a better kind of a template for combining all that stuff than Elvis Presley,
Absolutely. And so was that song ever recorded? Anything
good
ever
question.
come of it?
Nobody knows what happened to that song. Nobody. Once Jeanette gets into Graceland, I don't know if she ever remembered to even give the song to. Whatever happened. What the story of the song ends when she gets inside the gates of Graceland. When she was then somehow miraculously able to then do something with the song. If Elvis was, I can't imagine the song was any good, but it's just an incredible story. But a copy of the song doesn't exist. I've never seen a copy of the song, even as a kid. It's just lost to history, I guess.
Wow. And when you say she took the song to Elvis, what did that look like? Was it her singing on a tape? Like, was it just the lyrics?
Nobody sang. Like nobody in my family, none of my mother's side. My mother played piano in church and stuff, and my dad sang, like around the house and stuff, and had a good voice. But as far as nobody could sing a song, not even demo it. It would have been lyrics written on a sheet of notebook paper. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess once Jeanette got in there, she lost all sense of time and space to even remember why she came. It's funny because she went as a 16-year-old. She said she liked Elvis's records, but she thought it was ridiculous the way girls reacted when they saw him, with Elvis mania, pulling their hair out and screaming and trying to tear his clothes off. She says, I like his records, okay, but I was a bigger fan of Buddy Holly. And so she took this Greyhound bus, I don't know, 450 miles on a Greyhound in 1957, pre-interstate. uh, it must have taken 24 hours or something, right? He
Right.
stops, and she said she sang Buddy Holly's song every day, over and over and over. Probably sung a 3 minute song, 500,000 times. I bet the people on the bus were never so happy to get rid of somebody. But she said that she was just there as kind of wasn't a crazy lunatic fan, and then she saw him, and she used to talk about what he looked like. And there's a lot of people around Elvis, his Memphis Mafia guys and so forth, that talk about like that, like nobody looked like Elvis did.
Hmm.
That he was like the prettiest. I think Red West or Sonny West, one of his Memphis Mafia guys, was quoted as saying, "He's prettier than any woman I'd ever." He says, "I'm a heterosexual man. I'm married, whatever. I'm straight as an arrow and everything. But Elvis was the prettiest human being I've ever seen." And my Aunt Jeanette's story was that she's in the house, and everybody sleeps all day, and Elvis, nothing starts happening till Elvis gets up at 3, 4 o'clock or whatever, and they would get ready to go out to wherever they were going to do. And so she's walking down a hallway upstairs and passes the bathroom, and Elvis is inside the bathroom with the door open, and he had on his dress slacks. He had gotten out of the shower. He's shirtless but with a bath towel around his neck, and he's in the bathroom mirror, and he's combing his hair, and he's doing his DA in the back, and he's got the towel so that the Brill cream and stuff don't get on his pop's collar of the dress shirt. And my Aunt Jeanette walked by and looked in there and saw him and just froze. And Elvis looked, and and my Aunt Jeanette said she started stuttering and stammering, and she said to him, "You're not very photogenic." And Elvis looked at her and he said, "Photogenic." And he just kept combing his hair and corrected her pronunciation. But she said nobody looked like him, and um, that was having one degree of separation as a kid. Hearing these stories from my aunt, who we just loved. She was, like I said, she was like a second mother. She didn't have kids of her own, so my brother and sister and I were her babies, and I couldn't have asked for a better uh, musical education as far as records and record making. And my brother and sister are both older than me, so I had their records from the early and mid 60s, all the Beatles stuff, Stones, all the pop stuff, Guess Who, and and all the soul music, the Supremes and the Temptations and Marvin Gaye, and Stevie Wonder's on the radio, and I had my uncles that were into all the 50s stuff, from the countryside like Ray Price and Hank Williams to the rock and roll side, Little Richard and Fats Domino and stuff. And so it was just a perfect storm for a kid who just was beginning a lifelong love affair with music. I'm still in love with music.
Hmm.
I was telling a friend of mine the other night in a text that um, I'm really blessed to still be very much in love with music. My wife puts up with me playing electric guitar. I've been rehearsing some new material for a blues fest or a music fest that we're doing at the end of this month, and we play it every year. So I want to do new material, each time, and I probably played 12 hours of guitar in 2 days, and through an amp and singing, and I'm in the living room, and my wife's in the kitchen making dinner and doesn't come stab me. So it's a perfect uh, it's a perfect marriage in that she loves music and loves me and lets me do it, and I'm still in love with making music. I still get so excited and turned on by hearing, by music in general, all
Hmm.
kinds.
Well, talking about Elvis, how nobody looked like him, nobody looked like him, nobody moved like him, Nobody really sounded like him. Like
Absolutely.
I can't think of another era of music where somebody was just that different in every facet. I go forward to maybe punk rock, the look of that, the style of
Hmm.
music, that was pretty
Right.
different. But at
Sure.
that time, Elvis was like an alien coming down from another
It's
planet.
that's exactly what I was going to say, Scott. Like those people or those artists that seem that are so unworldly that it's like they stepped off of a spacecraft, right? And
Hmm.
it's like, where did this come? And at the time of Elvis, there was so much social relevance to him breaking, color barriers. Um, because there was race radio. Even radio wasn't integrated
Hmm.
in until the mid '50s, and um, he just broke ground in such a way that I don't think could ever be repeated. It's I was reading today where Mick Jagger had a quote of us talking about him, and he said that he was just peerless, that he was and is supreme. There's just no, you know, uh, just knowing the records and his, you know, a lot of it gets lost in the hoopla and the different things, the extraneous things to his music. I mean, people that worked with him, and you listen to the records, vocally, he was an absolute monster. He was just, and he had like at least three voices, like he had the '50s thing. He had several voices, a head voice. He had the most beautiful head voice on those early '60s things, like It's Now or Never and Are You Lonesome Tonight, and those ballads and things, and just huge operatic voice. There's opera stars that are. Who's the guy from the Three Tenors that, when asked what is, not Pavarotti, but one of the other guys, uh, was asked who his favorite singer was, and he said Elvis Presley.
Wow.
you know,
And you were also saying about how he had so many different genres of music that he could perform and be incredible at. That kind of reminds me of my favorite artist, Bob Dylan, who
yeah.
had his folk period, then he went into the electric. He had a country phase. He had
Boo! Electric guitar. Boo! Get
yeah,
it off.
yeah. He had a gospel like he
Yep.
was the same kind of musical chameleon as Elvis
Chameleon.
was.
Yes. Hmm. And a sponge. You have to first, to be able to perform that, you first have to soak all that in, and Dylan. Uh, I adore him. We as a songwriter, he's without peer. I mean, you could make an argument for others being, somewhere in the same conversation, but yeah, to go from, all of the early, Greenwich Village folk stuff to all that stuff with the band and you know at the Newport the folk festival, and then later with the gospel stuff, and just an incredible artist.
And the longevity of, like, he's in his 80s now. He's still touring regularly, playing the piano mostly now. But
Is that right? I didn't know that.
yeah, but the longevity of him and just the catalog that he has is just, to me, it's
The
unrivaled.
catalog, incredible. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. We do
and it,
several. My wife and I sing together acoustically in acoustic shows, duos, and we just keep learning and relearning Dylan things. We do Forever Young, and we do Positively Fourth Street, and uh, we just recently, because we had never done it, even go back to learning, trying to learn the words, and thought we knew them, or thought I knew them, but to perform them of like a Rolling Stone, um, but just yeah, Dylan, man, I do Don't Think Twice,
mm,
uh, just amazing. That era of his, my favorite, stuff is like, all that mid to late '60s stuff is just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And he could write a song that was the most beautiful love song that you've ever heard. I'm thinking Girl from the North Country, One Too Many
Hmm.
Mornings, songs like that. And then you get Positively Fourth Street, Idiot Wind, which are some of the most
Yeah.
venomous
Venom,
lyrics that
acerbic. Yeah. Like,
yeah, that you would ever hear. And just I cannot imagine being on, there's always the joke about Taylor Swift. She's gonna write, an album about her next ex-boyfriend. But like
yeah.
I would not want to be on the receiving end
Of Bob Dylan's
of a Bob Dylan.
wrath. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Hell hath no
absolutely.
fury like Robert Zimmerman scorned.
That's right.
You
He
know,
does not suffer fools gladly.
no, he, I was getting ready to do this gig for a buddy of mine locally, who's a big Dylan fan. And so I wanted to learn Positively Fourth Street to do for him. And as you know, and your listeners, if you're familiar with it, the song, it's something like, I don't know, 12, 13 verses. There's no chorus, there's no refrain, nothing repeats. It's just so you have to memorize like this, like 10 or 12 stanzas of lyrics. And so in the weeks prior to this show, I got guitars everywhere. So I get guitar on and I say, "You've got a lot of nerve to say you are my friend." And I'm trying to get, if I could get 6 verses to do for the show. And I'm just going around the house practicing as I pick up a guitar and say, "You've got a lot of nerve." And our daughter Lily was maybe 4 or 5 years old at that time. She's 13 now. And since she's surrounded by music all the time, particularly her mother and her dad singing music and playing, she never comes up to me ever and says, "Daddy, will you sing such and such a song?" Ever. She's like, she goes in the room, closes her door. You know what I mean? It's like enough already. And so we did this show, and about a month maybe after we had done this show for my friend, uh, she came up to me at the house, and she's like 5 years old, and she said, "Daddy, will you play that Lavender song?" And I said, "What?" She said, "The Lavender song." I said, "Baby, I don't know any Lavender song. You sure?" "Yeah." I said, "How does it go?" She says, "You've got a lavender to say you are my
Oh, that's
friend."
amazing. That's
So the
amazing.
song is now forever to me, the Lavender
The
song, if
Lavender
we ever
song.
do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And just at that age, there you spoke of being a sponge. At that age, they are such sponges that that would have just seeped into her brain and stayed there,
Yeah,
right?
she heard it, and she's not right, not even paying attention consciously. Yeah, but soaking it all that stuff in. You got to be careful what you say around kids because you don't know what they're going to remember you for
Absolutely,
the rest of their life.
absolutely. Hey, everybody, this is Scott, the host of the Sunday Morning Coffee Podcast. I would like to invite you to support the show through our Patreon page at patreon.com/smcpod. That's patreon.com/smcpod, where for only $4 per month, you can get early access to episodes and members only content. Once again, that's patreon.com/smcpod, and I thank you for your support. So, you mentioned your family's influence or your family's love of music influencing your love of music. Who influenced, or was this just purely you that decided to pick up the guitar? Was there a family member that played, or a friend, or did you just decide, hey, I want to do this?
After playing Scott for, I don't know, I think my dad got me my first guitar. I would have been like 11, maybe 10 or 11 years old. Like all through high school and all of that, just playing, by myself, whatever, for myself. When I came to college, and started hanging out with other guys who played guitar, um, and we'd get together and just jam and play and stuff. And that led to me. Uh, well, no, I take that back. Um, was just playing, wasn't playing in a band, had no even intention of ever playing in a band. It had never occurred to me to play in a band. Uh, and I had a buddy, he's still a good friend of mine, uh, who worked at the local record store. And, you know, the record store would get promotional copies of albums and to play in the store. And the employees of the store could take albums that they dug home with them and they'd record them on, you know, cassette, bring them
Right.
back to the store the next day. So my buddy called me one evening it would have been in 1983. So I would have been 21 years old, and my buddy who was into blues like me, you know, once I got away to college, and you know, I mean, I knew how to play every Elvis song and every Creedence song and every Beatles song, and uh, but I started getting more into blues and like a little, you know, deeper stuff. And with someone like Elvis, whom I, you know, still love, you know, going backwards, you know, so like, yeah, Elvis did That's All Right Mama, but that's an Arthur Crudup song. So what is Big Boy Crudup doing? I listen to his stuff. So like Mystery Train, that's Junior Parker. So I'm listening to the guys that, you know, influenced my guys kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And so my buddy calls me one evening in 1983, and he's lost his mind. He's just laughing hysterically on the phone, and it's like, and I'm trying to find out what he's talking about, and he's listening to this album, and he's just telling me, "You're not going to believe this guy." I said, "What guy?" And he says, "This guy, man." He said he's from Texas. And I said, "So, you know," uh, he's playing the side A of Stevie Ray Vaughan's Texas Flood album. And he's flipping out and he's telling me, I'm like, "Who is that?" And he says he's playing like Albert King and Jimi Hendrix, man. And I'm like, Albert King and Jimi Hendrix? And I said, "Is it a black guy or a white guy?" He says he's white. I said, "A white guy?" I said, "What does he look like?" He says he looks like Clint Eastwood, man. Because on the cover of Texas Flood, Stevie's wearing that poncho. And
Yeah.
in 1983, somebody talking about a guy that's playing guitar like Albert King and Jimi Hendrix, a white guy from Texas wearing a poncho. It was like you're saying about Elvis. It was like, did he get off of a UFO? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where did this come from? Because in 1983, I don't know what's the number one song in America. Something by Boy George or
Oh, likely so. Yeah.
Madonna or something. You know, and so we got tickets to go see Stevie Ray Vaughan uh, and Double Trouble in a little club in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is like a four-hour drive from us. And I went in as a club, a nightclub, and his first album had just come out, and I went to the stage and put my elbows on the stage like this, and Stevie's mic stand was right there, and so we returned and saw him at that same club about a year later, and I had the same spot. Uh, so that night, I literally, Scott, had no designs on playing with anybody else other than just sitting around with a bunch of my college buddies and playing, you know, Runaway on guitar and stuff. Uh, to seeing Stevie Ray Vaughan that first night, and it was an epiphany that I had that that's what I want to do for the rest of my life and with the rest of my life. Because I didn't think it could be done. I'd never seen anybody, certainly in person, channel music the way that he did. And it was just absolutely life changing for me. And so that was the instant when it absolutely dawned on me my purpose as far as what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Hmm. And you mentioned working backwards, and I think I'm not going to speak for everybody. I think that happens quite often because we'll go back to Dylan, and through Dylan I learned about Woody Guthrie, and I
Mhm.
became a fan of Woody Guthrie's music. And I grew up, my teenage years were the mid '80s, so I was a metalhead. I was into, Megadeth and all that sort of stuff. And you read articles about them and who their influences are, like the MC5 and New York Dolls and all these other bands. And you go back and you listen to that. And it's like, almost like a time warp that you go back and you discover all these other bands because your favorite artists love them. And I think
Right. You,
that's an incredible way to discover, other music.
if the listener, like you, has the heart and the passion, the desire to do that, and it's not just sounds playing on your car radio, certainly, yeah, to where you want to know. So if you like Bob Dylan, you want to know what Bob Dylan likes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you're going back and listening to Guthrie and Dave Van Ronk and Lead Belly and whoever was he liked,
Mm-hmm.
and you hear, and it's beautiful too because you can hear things that strike you as how that artist that became Bob Dylan or Elvis or Paul McCartney or whoever, how you can hear little bits that, yeah, that's Paul McCartney does that vocal line in All My Lovin' that you're hearing, Carl Perkins do or something, 10 years before the record. So that's a really beautiful thing about, I guess, art in general, but certainly where you can go back and connect dots and go backwards, you know?
I and I think that happens more. Anyway, it happened for me more as I got a little bit older. Because when I was a teenager, I was your typical idiot teenager, like, oh, my music is the best, and that's all I'm going to listen to, and that was it, kind of thing. But as you get older, and you start, okay, well, my favorite artist likes this artist, so why don't I go check that out? And then your own tastes expand as well. You become more open minded to new genres of music. And like
Sure.
now,
Right
I
on.
like I like everything from some hip hop to metal to folk to even some country like Hank Williams Jr. And it just, I think your mind opens more in general as you get older, but with music,
Sure.
for sure.
Sure. Sure. World gets bigger, you know,
Hmm.
it's a small world, but I wouldn't want to paint it.
That's
Right.
right.
And the word, my quote that I use a lot from Louis Armstrong is, there ain't but two kinds of music, good and bad. And I play good,
Right.
because when they ask you, I hate categories, and I mean, I understand the necessity, for just categorizations, uh, but it's to pigeonhole music. Like the hardest question I'm ever asked is like, what kind of music do you play? Well, good music for good
Good.
people. That's
Yeah.
what I tell them,
Hmm.
because it's so many different styles, and it's hard to find any kind of style that's just some straight purist that doesn't have influences, just off the beam a little bit, in anyone's music, and
Hmm.
that's a good thing. Uh, it's as you get older though, your world, gets bigger, certainly.
Hmm. And I was looking for music a while back, um, and I was on Bandcamp, which is a really really cool site that I buy a lot of music
Very
from.
good.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and
It's the best for the artist too.
that's
It's
why I try to buy as much from there as I possibly can. So
Yeah, man.
I was looking at some of the categories of music, and it was out of control. It's like po- post punk, emo, electronica. I'm like, what the hell is that mean? Like,
Left-handed.
yes, that's right.
Cap, left-handed Capricorn, emo,
That's right. And it's like, well,
samurai, and
never,
anime jazz.
yes, and I never would have thought to look for that category. So I think it's, I ignore all that stuff as much as I possibly can. I just thought it was funny talking about, pigeonholing music, that it's even more
Yep.
pigeonholed in some cases now. So
Yep.
Yeah.
When I'm putting my music up on like streaming platforms, I always got to uh, you have a genre, and then you have a subgenre. So you could say, for example, like blues, and a subgenre country, like you do country blues, like Delta blues. If you do like Southern rock, these genres and subgenres. But uh, and then they have always a question about who do you sound like? What
Mm,
artist do you sound like? And that's just for their algorithm, to recommend you.
right.
If you say you sound like Buck Owens, then they can. If somebody's looking at a Buck Owens, some Bakersfield thing, they say, "Oh, well, this guy." Um, but you do you want to sound like anybody? I mean, that's kind of the again to go to Elvis when he first went to Sun Records to cut a record, just a little demo for himself. The legend is that he did the record for his mother's birthday, but that's not correct because he went into the studio in like March, and his mom's birthday's in August or something. So it was like he was doing it because he wanted to hear what he sounded like on record. And
Hmm.
Sam Phillips, the studio boss there at Sun, was not present when Elvis first came in, but his secretary Marion Keisker was, and so she checked Elvis in and gave and took his name down and whatever, and she asked him, "Who do you sound like?" And Elvis said, "I don't sound like nobody." And that's what she wrote down. He don't. He says he don't. He don't sound like nobody.
Couple of
And
double negatives in there, but
a double negative means he sounds like Elvis. Yeah, and
right.
but like he was into Dean Martin's singing, and Bill Kenny, the great tenor of the Ink Spots, and guys like that, and all of the gospel singers that he loved. So yeah, uh, it's hard to try to find your voice. To find it is difficult enough, but then to market it once uh, if people don't know who Lightnin Charlie is, they want to know. Well, it's a legitimate question to say, what kind of music do you play?
Hmm.
Um, and it for me that I play so much, such a diverse, eclectic mix of styles that it's just impossible for me to have an elevator pitch to somebody that in 30 seconds encapsulate what you sound like. And
Hmm.
you know we did
I can kind
a
of I can kind of
I'm
relate
sorry.
to that. I can kind of relate to that in a minor way because it's the same when you start hosting your podcast on Spotify. They ask you what your category is and your subcategory.
There you
And
go.
you know,
Right, right.
I talk to all different types of people. Talking. That's not a word. I've spoken to doctors, musicians,
Sure.
all sorts. So there isn't really a category. It's not really self help. It's not really, business related. So, I kind of choose
You're
the
just
entertainment category in general and say, leave
as
it
a
at
kind
that.
of a default. You're talking
Hmm.
to people, right? So it's like, what
Right.
kind of people? Well, the world's full. It's all different people, right?
That's right.
You're not just talking to one kind of person about one kind of thing. And it's,
Hmm.
you know, years ago, I've done this a PBS musical a concert showcase called "Song of the Mountains." It's filmed uh, in Virginia, not too far from me, and it's shown all over North America. I don't know, 300 PBS affiliates carry the "Song of the Mountains," and it's a live concert, and they've got a New York crew that comes down with their mobile to the little old town in Virginia at a historic theater that is filmed at. Beautiful performance venue in Marion, Virginia, a little bitty town. And so the New York crew comes down, and when I played it for the first time, I've done it maybe four times. They want a bio, they want a real good idea of they want to know the songs you're playing, the composers, and all the credits and things. And so on my bio at the time, I don't know what I said, that it read at that time something like that I play everything from Mahalia Jackson to Muddy Waters, uh, you know, Little Richard to Hank Williams or something. And so I went and did the show, and I was coming off stage, and I was nervous. I don't know. I don't know how old I was, but it's probably the first time I was on a nationally televised uh, program, and so I was, nervous in a good way and wanting it to go well and everything. And when I came off stage, a great set, people, the audience loved it. I came off stage, and the stage manager was waiting for me and said, the the director wants to see me on the mobile truck. And when she said, he wants to see you on the mobile truck, she saw my face just go,
What's
what did
going
I
on here?
do? What did
Yeah.
I do? And she said, no, 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 it's good. He just wants to introduce himself and meet some of the artists sometimes. It wouldn't be anything bad. So I go onto the truck, and I sat down next to him, and there's little TV screens, like 16 of them all over the place. And he says, I just want you to know that when I read your bio and it said that you play everything from Mahalia Jackson to Hank Williams, I didn't like you. I didn't want to like you. It sounded like the biggest mishmash of, you know, the biggest train wreck of, styles I'd ever heard. And I didn't like you and didn't want to like you. And he said, when you came on, it took about 30 seconds for me to get it. And he said, you're playing and your music and singing and play. And he says, I got it. And he said, everything you play sounds like you. It just sounds like you. And with all these styles. And, that's certainly a great compliment, for a musician uh, that strives to have their own voice and their own. Uh, my goodness, you can hear 2, 3 notes of Keith Richards playing guitar. It's Keith Richards,
Hmm.
or not even a vocal thing, but just some instrumentalist. When you hear they're playing, you can tell it's them. And that's a magic trick, really. I
Hmm.
mean, you're just dealing with wooden wire and notes. There's only 8 of them, and semitones. It's not like you've got a infinite number of. And so when people have that gift and talent, it's a real rare thing, and certainly it's what I strive for, in bringing all these things together.
And it's not easy to convince someone that quickly that's going into it looking to dislike you.
He didn't like me, and he loved me. He talked to me that night after we were after the show, wanting to give me my own PBS. Like, I don't remember what his concept was at the time, if I was hosting some kind of live thing, but he said that PBS is always looking for some fresh face that would present music, art, whatever, um, in a fashion that would appeal to a big, wide uh, variety of viewers.
Hmm.
And he talked to me about that idea for probably an hour after loadout that night, and it never materialized. But um, you know, after about 20 years or so of failing to be able to identify my style of music to people, I just came up with the hook, good music for good people. Uh,
Hmm.
I play what kind of music it is, good music. And the people that I play it for uh, enjoy it, and they're there to hear it rather than, playing good music at, cutting stabs and honky tonks and roadhouses and stuff like I did for 20 years, where they, they're not there for the music. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So let's go back now. You're playing guitar, you're just jamming with your friends. And when is your first show in front of an actual audience? And who was that with? Who were you playing with at that time?
I started, I guess, prior to the band. I would play. It wasn't a church service, but it was at the college. They would have um, different denominations would have like a Baptist student union and a Methodist kind of thing, and it would be a pastor and his wife, and they would have dinners like on a Tuesday night or something, and kids would come, uh, and just a real kind of laid back thing, not a worship service or anything. And I started bringing an acoustic guitar to that, and would get up, sing some gospel songs there. And that was about at the time when I saw Stevie, and got instantly really serious about my electric guitar playing, uh, and got in a group. Uh, the singer left. I started singing, and so then the first paid gig that I ever had in my life was with that band at a strip club. So it's a tale of two cities there. I go from playing acoustic guitar in the church to playing electric guitar, in between poles.
Angel
And
on one shoulder and devil on the other shoulder.
I tell you, man, and it was that was I remember the education that I got that served me well as far as playing clubs at that strip club. Uh, and it was like a regular. I don't remember if we played. I don't know, maybe 2-3 nights a week kind of thing, and was a recurring gig. But um, I remember going out. It was summertime in the South, and I wanted they hadn't gotten our name up on the marquee, and I want my name up on the marquee because we're playing. I mean, this was like the big time, right? And so I went and asked the boss, who was a lady. Well, she was a woman. She was no lady. But I asked her if I could have the letter box, with all the letters to go up on the marquee and the ladder to put our name up. And so she gave them to me. I took the ladder out into the parking lot and put the name of the band up, on the marquee. It was about 100 degrees in the parking lot, July or something. And I go back into the club, they're not even open yet. It's 1, 2 in the afternoon or whatever. And I bring her ladder back and the box of letters, having done her job for her or somebody's by putting the name up on the sign. And I'm sweating like I stole something. And I asked her if I could have a Coke, a fountain Coke. And so she gets a glass and ice and pours me a Coke and puts it across the bar and says,
That'll be $1.
$2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Whatever. It's a strip club, probably $2.
Probably, yeah.
And I was like, $2? I work here. You know what I mean? And that was that was the best bit of education I got as far as that place was concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. You talked a little bit about acoustic guitar and electric guitar. So for the uninitiated, such as myself and other people listening, what are the differences between playing an acoustic, other than the sound, of course, the obvious, but let's talk technically. Is it a matter of if you can play an acoustic, you can play an electric and vice versa? Or are there things that there are adjustments that you have to make between the two?
Yeah, good question. I love guitar. Well, I love the guitar questions. I love guitars. Any, I feel that, and I've told this to a lot of people that are either have kids that are wanting to start playing guitar, or people that want to start playing guitar, to start on an acoustic guitar uh, for a few reasons. The nut width, the strings are a little bit usually further apart from one another on an acoustic guitar, so you have more room to put your fingers to fret the strings and a little larger margin of error.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing about an electric guitar for a beginner is it's amplified, and nothing sounds worse than somebody trying to learn to play an instrument and it's plugged into a, you know, a 50-watt amp or something. You know, I mean, it's just, and it sounds so bad that it makes the the, the player not want to play.
Right.
um, and so uh, but what you play on an acoustic guitar is certainly it's just a vastly different instrument, uh, partly because of the amplification uh, and the sustain of notes. For example, if I played a line on an acoustic guitar that said "dow dow dow," the notes would decay so fast that it wouldn't have like a vocal quality of like a note singing.
Mm-hmm.
Do do do. I could make that sound just like that on with an electric guitar and an amp, but on an acoustic guitar, at least the style that I play is a lot more. I do play some finger style, but uh, acoustic guitar you can strum and strum hard, and it sounds pleasing. Whereas on an electric guitar, it's a real knack to be able to strum it with fervor and it not sounding awful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's a lot of little nuances as far as bending strings, like in a blues or rock and roll kind of a way. Uh, it's a lot harder to bend strings on an acoustic guitar than on an electric. The strings are generally smaller on an electric, but you have an unwound G string on an electric guitar that you probably don't on an acoustic, and there's a lot of little technical things like that. But two very different instruments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've just recently gotten into playing some electric guitar in my solo and duo shows, which I was just playing strictly acoustic for years. Um, and it's been a lot of fun, and it adds an energy, to the show and to the songs that it's very hard to get just with an acoustic guitar. You have that vibe, on an acoustic instrument, and but you know. And I started on acoustic guitar, and I love it. But there's something about plugging in, and especially when you're playing with other guys. When you're playing in an ensemble. You
Right.
know,
Right.
uh, acoustic guitar for playing by yourself is certainly probably makes more sense. But you know, I always love playing. There's something about the ensemble aspect of music which is just so exciting and
Mm-hmm.
uh, beautiful to do and to hear.
There's an artist that I really really like. You may have heard of him. I'm not sure. He's called the Bones of J.R. Jones.
Huh,
If
great name.
Yeah, so I'll send you a link to his stuff. He's really good. But
Yes, please. Yes.
I saw a video of him on YouTube, and I couldn't believe it. He's playing the guitar, he's playing drums, and he's playing harmonica. And I'm thinking, how in the
Wow.
world?
So
Like,
he's got a rack. He's
yeah,
got a rack for the harp and electric guitar
yeah, and it's basically kick drum, but
and a
still,
kick drum to foot pedal. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
your feet are moving at one. You, I was
Yeah.
blown away by that. Like I have trouble like singing and playing air guitar at the same time, and this guy's playing two legit instruments and singing at the same time. Like it's
Right.
awe
That's killer.
inspiring. Yeah, the talent of
Yeah.
yeah. So I'll definitely
Yeah,
drop
some of
you
those
his
guys,
link.
you have these guys that use these stomp boxes and stuff, or it's like maybe like a kick drum pedal, that's just hitting a like a cajon, or something, and they mic it and stuff, or a kick drum pedal hitting like an old Samsonite suitcase or something that's got
Right.
newspaper inside it, or all these kind of cool ways to make sound, uh, yeah, I'm amazed by those guys
Hmm.
that can do that, you know.
And there, yeah, and there's a Canadian icon, Stompin' Tom Connors, who
Huh.
his claim to fame is, hence his name, Stompin' Tom. He would play the acoustic guitar and sing, and he would basically kick, let's call it a a board that's on the
Oh yeah.
stage, and he
Yeah.
would kick the hell out of that thing as he's,
Wow.
hence the name Stompin' Tom Connors.
How cool.
So
Well,
yeah,
whatever gives you that sound, like at Motown, they had a piece of wood, a piece of plywood that they used on so many tracks. There's probably 50 million records sold from Motown with this board, um, that the Funk Brothers, the house band, like Baby Love by the Supremes. You hear them like slunk, 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 slunk. Baby love, my baby love, I need you. Oh, how I need you. Slunk, slunk, slunk. And they would bring this, like, I don't know how big it is. I've never seen it. Piece of plywood, and they just put the singers on it, and they're patting their feet as they sing, uh, and it becomes an instrument. And I mean, you take that board out of Baby Love, you got nothing left. You
right.
got a tambourine and some vocal, and I'm really busy with my feet when I play, and it's to a detriment. Usually, I think, I'll hear recordings live from places, depending on the sound of the place, where my foot's louder than I am, on the stage. Um, I remember seeing Ray Charles twice at a fair, um, in East Tennessee back, I don't know, probably around 1980, 81. And he did two shows, and I went to both. And I wanted to sit in the front for one show to see his face, and I wanted to go around to the back so I could see his hands on the piano on the second show. And the thing that struck me, that I still remember the most about it, was not his face nor his hands, but his feet.
Hmm.
Because, man, his feet, I mean, like one foot's playing hi hat and the other foot's playing the snare and the kick's going on, and all this syncopation is happening with his feet under the piano. It was
Wow,
incredible.
that is
Yeah,
incredible. So when did you
Brother Ray.
start? Yeah, for sure. When did you start? At what point did you start writing down stories of your career in music? Was that early on? And did you just start writing them down, or did you have them in your head and then decided, hey, these would make some pretty good stories?
I had them on my head, on my and my teeth, in the back of my neck, and my ribs.
Everywhere.
The stories were like so, and 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 you're talking about the stories that I compiled in my book.
Correct.
Um,
Yeah.
I didn't start writing them down, Scott, until uh, I started a blog, in about 2005, something like that. That people started blogging on the internet and stuff, and folks were always asking me, because I played music for a living as my sole, uh, SOLE, means of making a living. And people are curious about that,
Hmm.
naturally curious. And they're always asking me what it's like to play music for a living. And so I would tell them these crazy stories that I felt could only happen to a musician. There seems to be things, certain kind of parameters that just like take place around the lifestyle of the musician, the people that are around the musician, uh, being in these places that are serving alcohol, and there's chicks, and there's, gangsters, and there's, it's just this confluence of bad companions that makes for the most fantastic stories. And so I started writing these blogs once a month and putting them on my website
Mm-hmm.
at lightnincharlie.com. And I would do them around the first of the month each month, and I called it the Lightnin Lowdown. And I would just tell just some, story of something happened on the road or something, and they started getting really, really popular. Like, and I didn't know how popular until it would be like the third or fourth of the month, and I hadn't posted the lowdown for that month yet, and I'd get emails from Japan and Australia and the UK and stuff. Hey, where's the new lowdown? It's August the 3rd. What's up? And I was like, really?
Wow.
So yeah, and so I kept monthly the blogs for about 3 years, um, and I think and I stopped because I just didn't have time to I think that's right about probably about the time that our daughter was born, and um, um, so ended up compiling them. I have a friend that asked me about publishing them. He wanted to publish them into book form, and so we did that, and uh, it's been a great kind of a side side gig for me,
Mm-hmm.
um, as a storyteller, and a bookseller and an author and so forth. But when the book came out, I don't know, it's in its second edition. So maybe, I don't know, the second edition, uh, probably 7, 8 years ago, something like that. But when it came out, and folks, fans of mine, I call them lightning bugs, my fans, were buying the book and reading the stories, I'd go play a gig and people would request stories. Like, I'd say, what do y'all want to hear? Some between songs. So I say, playing some dinner show or something. What do y'all want to hear? And somebody say, tell us Fire in the Hole, chapter 16. You know what I mean? People are requesting stories, instead of songs. So it's been a great uh, way to, because, as a musician, I want to be a storyteller as a musician also, of
Mm-hmm.
course, through words and music. And the book has some childhood things. It has all those influential things, stories about that. It has stuff about, bar fights and arrests and strip searches, and,
All the
you
good
know,
music stories.
all those good, road stories. Yeah. So it was a lot of fun to do, really a lot of fun to do. And uh, I've got maybe, I don't know, half a dozen blogs, because the book is huge. It's like 355 pages. Uh, so it's really, you know, uh, really voluminous. And I've got maybe half a dozen blogs somewhere on my website. And that, here in the next few years, maybe, have enough to put out another follow up, because got no shortage of stories, that's for sure.
That's right. And there is a correlation between being a storyteller in written form and being a storyteller in music, because you
Hmm.
need the rhythm, you need to hook the audience in.
Yes,
So there is kind of an overlap in between being a storyteller as a
yes.
musician and being a storyteller as an author.
And I think it actually improved. I think they cross-pollinated there and helped each other. I think I probably became a better songwriter as a result of writing the blogs and then editing the blogs into a book form. Um, I think it helped me as a songwriter as well.
I'm sure. So it's a funny bit of a story. I've released two self-published books of poetry.
Oh,
Working on a
cool,
third.
man.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just for fun, just because I like it. It's my kind of that and my podcast are my kind of way of self help kind of thing. Just and one of the poems from one of the books was called "The Troubadour," and
Oh, wow.
this is from no experience whatsoever. This is just out of my head, but it was about a guy who plays seedy old bars at night. He has to busk on the streets in the day to make a living, and his coffee maker breaks, and so he has to go out and earn some money to buy a new one. And so when I saw the pitch to have you on the podcast, I thought, damn right, like this has got to happen.
I showed up. I want my check. Where's my money?
Yeah, your residuals.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. I'm gonna sue you for writing poems about me.
Yeah.
That's all true. The coffee maker and all of it's absolutely art imitating life, man.
It's funny how that happens, isn't it?
That's awesome. That's really
Yeah.
cool, Scotty.
So let's talk a little bit about what I'm gonna give you every chance to talk about the book, where to get it, where to get your music, and so on. So what are you working on musically at the time being? Are you just gigging, or are you recording? Both? What's happening with you?
A big both. Yeah. We've I'm real busy gigging, but it's odd. I'm not on the road, but I'm still playing probably 20, 20 more 20 25 shows a month.
Wow.
Mostly solo things, but we've been recording an album, uh, which is quite a story. Uh, we began this record by accident in the fall of 2019 in Hamilton, Ontario. We were up visiting my wife's brother, who lives outside Hamilton,
Oh wow.
and
That's only a few
yeah.
hours away from me.
Is that right? Where are you
Yeah.
living? You live in Canada? You Canadian?
I'm in Ontario. I'm in northern Ontario, so I'm about
Wow.
4 hours away from Hamilton. I know it
Okay,
well.
okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, my wife's brother, who's he's a hillbilly like we are, but he married a gal from Hamilton and lives up there. And so we were up there on a family vacation in 2019, and he's a musician. My wife's brother, monster musician, uh, bluegrass, and but he can play anything, and he can play anything with strings on it. He's just phenomenal.
Hmm.
And we were up there on a visit, and he had told me on the phone like about this studio that he was working at, doing sessions at for other people. And so he says, uh, when you come up, bring a guitar, eh? Because he talks like that since now that he
Yeah,
lives there.
he's
We'll
converted.
get
Yeah,
some. Yeah, he's converted. Get some Timbits, eh? And go to the studio. We'll play some
right.
songs. So
Watch the hockey
I
game.
took it. Yeah, yeah. So what's the expression he says? Keep your stick on the
Keep
ice.
your
Is
stick
is
on the
that it?
ice. Yep, yep,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I said,
absolutely.
what? He says it's a hockey thing. I said, oh,
Yeah,
a Florida boy. I
it's
mean,
like keep your
so
eyes on the prize kind of thing. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, brought a guitar, acoustic guitar up there, and he said, the studio, the engineered studio said to bring y'all in. We'll just mess around for a couple hours and cut a couple songs, for fun. And Joe, my brother-in-law, would play bass, and my wife and I sing or whatever, and I play acoustic guitar and cut a couple songs. And he told me that the studio had a lot of old gear, a lot of vintage gear in it. So that's cool. So one of the days we're up there for like a week. He said, "You want to go to the studio tomorrow? What do you want to do?" It's like, oh, I don't know. what do you want to do? And so we just worked out, I think an Elvis Sun record, a song called I Forgot to Remember to Forget. And that I thought would be cool with slap bass and acoustic guitar. And Java Jive by the Ink Spots that my wife and I had done and thought that'd be cool with the Doghouse Bass. And so we drive to the studio, and it was an unmarked, it was like in a warehouse, unmarked. There's not a sign up, a business, They were filming a movie there, literally a motion picture where there was horse trailers and people on horseback and stuff. And we go into this warehouse and go into where the studio was, and there's just equipment, gear just everywhere. It wasn't some swanky, studio. There's just gear piled up everywhere. Drums and guitar amps and guitars and basses and pianos and stuff. And met the engineer setting up. He says, your vocal mic is there, Charlie. And so I get my guitar on, and this old RCA ribbon mic, RCA 44 ribbon mic is on a stand. And I'm looking at it, and all these old things have a patina and different scratches and dents that are just unique to them. And I'm looking at this mic up close, and I said to the engineer, I said, Trevor, this mic, I said, I know I've got a picture of Sam Cooke singing on an RCA 44 that looks just like this mic. And he turned around from his desk and he said, well, that's because that's that mic, eh?
Wow.
I said, what? He said, all of this gear came from Bill Putnam's A room at United Western in Hollywood. He said, Sam Cooke probably sang on that mic. So did Elvis. So did Sinatra. So did Ella Fitzgerald. So did the Righteous Brothers. So did the Beach Boys. So did, and I couldn't believe that I was getting ready to sing on a mic and through an audio chain and through gear that had made all these records. And if you're not familiar with United Western, that was the studio in LA, in Hollywood, that has produced more gold records than any other studio in history. Bill Putnam is known as the father of modern recording. He invented the recording console. He invented plate reverb. He and Les Paul used to argue about which one of them invented multi-tracking. And towards the end of his life, Les Paul finally said, F it, Bill did, to put an end to the argument. Right. And so I was so taken aback that when he tells me that Sam Cooke and Elvis sung on that mic, I started to cry. Like I wasn't, because I'm a weirdo, but I wasn't bawling, sobbing, but I got tears in my eyes just considering what was about to happen. That, from the time I was in footy pajamas and listening to all of these records and loving these singers and the sounds of the record, that I was so in love with my whole life, that I'm hearing my voice now through headphones, and it sounds like those records for the first time in my life. And it was just, I'll never forget it. And we cut those songs, and the sound was, again, like I've been chasing my whole life. And so now we've got to make a record, right? I mean, we're on family vacation. I don't have songs ready. I don't have originals ready. So I came back home and started cutting some things at home and sending them up there to the studio for him to run through his audio chain. And they were all covers. And at the time, and I'm writing songs and this was the fall of 2019. And the plan is to, cut these originals up there in Canada and put a record out maybe that spring or summer of 2020. But of course, had a little hiccup in spring of 2020 when the earth stopped turning and the world shut down. And
Yeah.
because of COVID, uh, we couldn't get two people on the floor at the same time in
Right.
Ontario. Um, so we were relegated to recording parts individually, remotely, shipping them back and forth. And what we've ended up with is about 2.5 albums worth of material that we're almost finished with. We're working on the last couple of tunes. We're finished with recording. We're just working on mixing the last couple tunes, and going to put out an album this spring, and it's called Life. And partly because, well, there's a song on the album called Life, um, but it's also because it's like been a life sentence. So I mean, guys could kill somebody and get out of prison, get paroled before while we're still making working on this album. But it's been 3.5 years or thereabouts, and it's been a real labor of love and a real learning process, and it's probably the best sounding. Well, I think it's without a doubt the best sounding stuff I've ever will have ever released, and this I think be my 8th album, um, and some of what I think are probably some of the best original stuff. Um, and we're doing all kinds of cool things. We've got songs with strings, uh, big, large ensembles of electric instruments down to acoustic, little small ensembles. Um, so it's going to be this spring, Lord willing, and uh, I'm forever connected with you hosers up there in Canada, in Ontario in particular, and all of this stuff. You can trace the migration of all of this gear, and it's literally like it's the holy grail of recording equipment.
Mm-hmm.
The
That's
first
amazing.
recording console ever built is in this warehouse, and again, unmarked. They've since moved to a new location, and Bill Putnam, he sold everything shortly before he died around 1970, I think, to a partner who kept the studio going as Mushroom Studios. And when he closed or went out of business or whatever, some buyer from out uh, from out Alberta or Calgary, somewhere way out west, brought all this stuff out of California up into Canada. And then a fellow named John Wozniak bought all this stuff from him. And Wozniak is a musician and a Yank. He's from New York, I believe, New York or New Jersey, but he lives up there in Hamilton. And
Mm.
he bought all of this stuff and trucked it across Canada to Ontario,
Hmm.
and has this studio, and the gear is absolutely mind blowing. Like, I remember when I was set up and I'm singing on the mic that Sam Cooke, cut change is going to come on, and right, and Elvis, recorded If I Can Dream on, and next to me is a clavinova, a keyboard, electric keyboard, a clav that Trevor tells me, well, that clav right next to you that you got your water on, your water bottle, this old broken down looking clav. All this stuff just stacked up all over the place. He said, that's the clavinova that Ray Charles plays in the Blues Brothers when he's singing Shake Your Tail Feathers in the pawn shop scene. Ain't
Wow.
nothing wrong
My
with the
goodness.
action on this piano. Yeah.
That's
Just
insane.
crazy. And there's stuff like that all over that building. And I think part of it is, and until they get like some real solid digs, I don't know what their plans are. Of course, COVID laid waste to everybody's plans, but they've got a more urban setting now in Hamilton that where the studio's set up, and they are bringing in more clients, because at the time I was there, they didn't want anybody to know they were there. It was like a secret, which made
Like
it even more of a cool vibe. Like you're going into
right.
the catacombs of the somewhere in Jerusalem, and seeing the Holy Grail is kept, the Ark of the Covenant is down here.
Like a
Crazy.
speakeasy. It's like a speakeasy for music.
Yeah. And the most iconic, historic, literally more million sellers are cut on, I mean, Pet Sounds, all that. If you've watched The Wrecking Crew, the documentary The Wrecking Crew, which I highly recommend, the band that, produced all of these seminal, iconic, anthems of rock and roll music and pop music through the 60s and 70s. And not just rock and roll, Sinatra, Dean Martin, Nat King Cole, Ella Fitzgerald, everything from the West Coast TV, all the TV themes were recorded there. Hawaii Five-O, all those songs. Just an amazing accident. And so it's taken, 3.5 years, but, thank you, Jesus, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. And we're looking at a spring release, for the album Life. And I'll have, another album and a half in the can, too.
Are there any plans to release it on vinyl, or is it just going to be digital?
Unless something, I'd love to release it on. I've wanted for my last 2 records to have it actually on the record, on vinyl, but I just haven't been convinced that my fan base would support it. You know what I mean? I don't know that. I would love to have it. It would just the expense of it to have it mastered again for vinyl, and then pressed. You could do a short run of vinyl, but I sure would love to do it, just to be able to have an LP in my house of me.
Yeah, totally.
would be worth whatever the cost. And we know that my wife denies me nothing. If I go to my wife, who she's an heiress, so she's got all kinds of money. On our second date, her maiden name is Clark, and on our second date, we're driving to the restaurant where we're going, and she says, matter of factly, "Have you ever heard of Clark bars?"
No way.
Clark bars? She says, "Yeah." I said, "The candy bar?" She says, "Yeah, I've heard of them." "Why?" She says, "That's my grandfather's company."
Wow.
I said, "Your grandfather is Clark of Clark Bars?" She says, "Yes, I'm an heiress to the Clark Bar fortune." And I said, "Really?" And I didn't think nothing about it. We're just going on and went on a date. We're eating dinner. And finally, halfway through dinner, she starts laughing, tells me, "I was only kidding about that Clark Bar stuff." I said, "Oh, she said, "I'm broke just like you."
She got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, if she is the heiress to the Clark Bar fortune, there's no excuse to not have a vinyl version.
I'd have vinyl in every room.
That's right.
Man. Because it's such a beautiful resurgence of vinyl.
It is. And I've started collecting again after collecting obviously through the 80s and so on. And I was at a record show locally with some buddies, and there was this one vendor that was selling $3 for every album. I was like, man, what kind of shape can these be in?
Right.
But I bought, I think, 3 or 4 from the vendor, and the vinyl is, to me, it's perfect because you still get, when you drop the needle, you get that crackle. and like it's not perfect, but to me it's perfect because you get
Oh
that
man,
and
perfect imperfection.
exactly. We spend so much time going, like, oh, CDs, the sound is so much better. And at the time I thought, yeah, it is. Now I don't
Not so
think so
sure.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I just love that vinyl sound.
and people aren't buying CDs. So,
Hmm.
when the time comes, and we'll probably have to make this decision, in the near future, because, like I said, as you'd have to master it for CD and master it for vinyl separately. People just aren't buying CDs the way that they
Hmm.
did. Everything's streamed and MP3s and on the phone, and so as far as an artist trying to make a living and sell their product, it's it's hard times. It's tough times to be selling
Hmm.
music, trying to sell your music. And my fan base is very, very faithful and just tremendous fan base I have that, you know, that will support me by purchasing, my stuff, whether it be t-shirts or books and CDs, whatever. But it's just gotten very hard. That's why, like Bandcamp, like you mentioned before, I think I've got a couple. Well, I think I got one single on Bandcamp that was released this year. Um, I think I think the price for the single is $1 or
Hmm.
$2, $1.99 or 99 cents or something. And but the buyer can give $5 if they want,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's, I think 80% I think goes to the artist, some kind of a big chunk like that, which on iTunes and Amazon and Spotify and all the rest of them, I mean, the artist is getting a hundredth of a cent or something on every stream. And
Hmm.
and so Bandcamp is a wonderful platform, uh, and for the buyer too, they can read the bio of the artist. The lyrics are there. It's like kind of the best of both worlds in a sense that
Hmm.
it's like revisiting LP days where you can open up the album cover and read the liner notes and read quotes about the artist talking about the songs and whatnot, and get the lyrics maybe, like on the sleeve,
Yep.
that would have all the lyrics on it. So that's a great resource for music lovers and musicians as well.
Absolutely. All right, so Charlie, I've taken a lot of your time today. It's been so much fun talking to you. But why don't you tell everybody
Been great, Scott.
where they can find you, website, social media, where can get the book? Just let us know where to
Yes.
find you.
Yeah. Well, Bandcamp, Lightnin Charlie. That's Lightnin Charlie. The same on any of the streaming platforms, Lightnin Charlie. Uh, my website is lightnincharlie.com, which has a shop where you can buy, books, CDs, T-shirts, all that kind of stuff, and also has links to all my social media and so forth on my website, lightnincharlie.com. The hardest word, I don't know why, in the English language to spell. If I had known when a guy came up to me one night, I'd been playing the guitar behind my head and with my teeth and everything, and this buddy of mine came up. His name was Randy, and he came up. And he said, "Man, you were like lightning." And the band leader was a harmonica player, it was a blues band. He said, "That's it. You're Lightnin Charlie," because there's a famous blues guy named Lightnin Hopkins, and so lightning, I don't know why it's so difficult for people in the press to spell. People put my name in the newspaper and come up with all kinds of just mutilations of the word. It's a common word. It's on the weather every night on the news. But anyway, Lightnin, no G on the end, Charlie. Lightnincharlie.com. Facebook, I have the Lightnin Charlie Show page. I have a Lightnin Charlie page, and I have my, what do you call it? Your profile page on Facebook is Charlie Real, REAL, because Mark Zuckerberg and his friends shut down my Lightnin Charlie page a few years ago and demanded my real last name. That they were, yeah, they were trying to protect me from spammers and robots and identity thieves. So they need my real name to do that.
Yeah.
Go figure.
They
And
need to out you publicly to protect you.
yeah, right. They want my real name to protect me. And this is, of course, about a month before he's like, he's subpoenaed before Congress and testifying that he didn't sell everybody's identity. And I thought, well, my last name doesn't mean anything to anybody. I mean, no one knows me by my last. So it said, you need my real name. And they had locked my account. And so I typed in the box REAL and thought, this will never work. Pat, thank you, Charlie Real, So
I just needed something in there. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and Twitter, Instagram, Lightnin Charlie. You can find me and YouTube. I've got hundreds of videos and stuff up on YouTube. And it's just been a pleasure, Scott. I appreciate you and all the real cool, good, gritty musical questions and stuff, and conversation about the real stuff, music. And I appreciate you very much, man, and your listeners.
Well, and right back at you, man. It's been a lot of fun. I'm going to definitely follow you on all your socials. I'm going to get myself a copy of that book because I'm looking forward to reading it, and I look forward to the album coming out as well.
You might have just talked me into vinyl, huh?
Yeah, well,
you might have talked me into pressing some vinyl.
I'm going to keep emailing you about it once a week or
right
so until you let me know that you're doing it.
Squeaky wheel gets the LP, right?
That's right. Well, man, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you again, and I'm looking forward to this episode coming out not this Sunday, but the following Sunday, and I hope we get to talk again down the road.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate you, man.
It's been a joy, man. Take care.
All right, man. Bye-bye.